if you are all aware of this little TV show called Squid Game, but if you're not, let me give you a quick refresher. Squid Game Season 1 is Netflix's #1 TV show of all time, with 1.65 billion hours streamed within the first 4 weeks. The overall viewing of this show was 2.6 times that of Netflix's then biggest TV show, Bridgerton Season 1, which is absolutely insane. Absolutely crazy. Even Stranger Things Season 4 had not beaten Squid Game Season 1. Everyone was watching and talking about Squid Game. And if you don't know its premise, I don't know why you're watching this video because I'm going to spoil everything. But if you don't know its premise, it is a South Korean dystopian survival thriller horror television series created, written, and directed by Hwang Dong-hyuk. Please forgive me if I mispronounce anybody because I'm really trying, but I just... Respect to you, sir, though, because this was truly a masterclass of a first season of a TV show. I can personally say, when I watched Squid Game for the first time, I thought this shit was absolutely insane in the best way possible. It was brutal, it was dark, it was emotional, it was thrilling, it had compelling characters, it had so much to say about economic struggles, disparity, capitalism, you name it. It was just the perfect blend of smart writing, smart filming, smart acting. This thing deserved all of the praise that it got, and I'm happy that it did. But as anything that has large success these days, the question was made, can there be more? Netflix, seeing that this thing is its biggest show ever to exist, would naturally think, maybe, just maybe, we should continue this story. Maybe, just maybe, we should make another season. Did you really think that Netflix would shut down its own piggy bank for the sake of artistic integrity? No. After Squid Game Season 1 was released in September 2021, it was confirmed in 2022 that there would be a Season 2. Fast forward 3 years after Squid Game Season 1, and we now have Season 2. And the biggest question is, did it live up to the hype of Season 1? And I can confirm, after watching Season 2 and binging it in one day, sadly, it unfortunately did not. And I don't say this lightly, because as much as I'm going to go into that this season was not as good as Season 1, I think that was basically the expectation of everyone. Call me out if you didn't believe this, but I truly felt after Season 1, when they announced Season 2, there was no way that they could live up to the masterclass that was Season 1. Season 1 was just so articulately crafted. The story, the characters, the games, every component that went into Season 1 felt extremely thought out. And it's true because the director, the creator, has stated that it took him, I believe, 10 years to make Squid Game, that he's had this in his back pocket for 10 years. Everything was meticulously thought out. Whereas Season 2, I don't know if I can say the same. The director himself has said that he had no intention of doing a second season because the overall process of writing, producing, and directing the series was so challenging, so he didn't think to do another one. And it does start to show with Season 2 that he is being stretched. However, I will give its praises because this isn't entirely a flop. Anyone who hated Squid Game Season 1, I don't think Season 2 is going to sell you. I'll just put that out there. Those who did love Season 1, There are different reasons, I think, that people love season 1. My dad, for example, loved it for the games in particular. Me, I loved everything about it, the story, the characters, the games, etc. And then other people loved how emotional it was, that it really tugged at your emotional heartstrings. Now, season 2, while not perfect, I'm gonna give it a fair assessment because I don't think it's fair to say that this was terrible. It absolutely was not. Yes, all of the technical aspects of this season was still on par with season 1. The filmmaking, the acting, the editing, the score. So much craftsmanship still and love being put into the series that I can't discredit, because sometimes there will come those shows where the first season or 2 is absolutely amazing, and then a new showrunner comes in and you can feel it. You can feel how completely different it is from its original seasons. And this one, I can happily say, doesn't feel completely different. Overall, I would say that they did a good job with keeping it feeling the same as the first season. There's still incredible acting, especially from our main character, of course. He's absolutely phenomenal in this role, absolutely eats it up. So there is still a lot of greatness there. It doesn't feel like this is a completely different show from the first season. Tonally, it's very much similar. It does help with the fact that all of these episodes were written and directed from the original creator. Those are some of the initial praises that I can give Squid Game Season 2 off the bat. Unfortunately, before we get into spoiler territory, I will say that in general, without spoiling, although a lot of it feels the same, some of it is because it kind of is the same. There are certain scenes and plot points that happened in season 1 that are pretty much the same in season 2. Not entirely the same. There is still a really great plot and message here, which I will get into when we get into spoiler territory. But there is a lot that you can't help but notice. Yes, this happened in season 1. I'm feeling the same because this was the same in season 1. There are characters, there is the game, obviously, but that one I'm assuming people were looking forward to anyways. But the way it was filmed and done was basically the same as season 1. Semi-spoiler, but this has already been out there, and if you watch to the end of the season, it will tell you, but I think people online are already confused. But yeah, I have seen the announcement of this online, but still semi-spoiler if you didn't know about this. But season 3 has been announced as the final season. A lot of people were not happy with how this season ended, and I can see as a season itself feeling empty with how the season ended, but then I understand why they left it the way they did if they are going to continue this for a third and final season. But I can see the mixed feelings about how the season ended, because yes, it was a lot and I don't know if it was a good a lot or not. But overall, as a season itself, I think if you were to take away the fact that this is second season to Squid Game, if you were to just look at it alone as a piece of television, this is great. This is still great storytelling. This is still great filmmaking. There's still a lot of intensity there. There's still all of that in there. But when you compare it to season 1 and how season 1 did all of this but better, it just but with me personally having low expectations because I knew how I felt season 1 was perfect in itself, I think this was great for what it was. I still believe that this was better than what I was expecting, but still obviously not as great as season 1. I'm going to talk, I feel like, more about the issues than the positives for this season, because there were a lot of problems that I personally had with it. But despite all of that, I still found myself entertained and intrigued throughout the whole season. What can I say? The man knows how to keep an audience captivated. So those are my non-spoiler thoughts. Let's get into the issues. Let's start with one positive that I had, which was the beginning 2 episodes of this season. Now, I think there might be a little bit of discourse with me on this one because I have seen comments already online saying how they felt like the first couple episodes were slow. And my live example of my dad was him complaining for the first 2 episodes of, where's the games? Why aren't we in the games yet? Wake me up when they're in the games. It depends on what you're looking for in Squid Game. For me personally, I do like seeing backstory. I do like seeing the whole plot unfold for itself. I don't need to see games. I'm not here just for that, but I can see why someone who was such a fan of season 1 having, I believe it was 5 games in total season 1 had, or 6. It was 5 or 6. I can understand why you would be desperate for that when episode 1 of season 1 had the red light, green light game. Whereas this season, we don't get to the games until episode 3. And even then, I did start to feel my game craving kick in a bit because it was the same red light, green light game. So I was sitting there, I want more. Please tell me there's more. But back to the positive of the first 2 episodes. I did appreciate how it felt natural with the way the plot moved in this season, because oftentimes when you have such a masterclass of a first season and something that wasn't meant to be continued the way that it ended, and yet you're forced to continue the story, it can feel so unnatural and it can feel very forced. Our faithful creator here was able to come up with a fairly natural storyline to continue the series, because yes, we did have it by the very end of season 1. Our main protagonist there was saying how he's gonna find you and he's gonna kill you to diminish the games as a whole. And how does he do it? With some help, of course. And where does he get that help? From our sexy cop, of course. As soon as we're introduced to him being alive and Gi-hun wanting revenge on these people, wanting to shut the whole thing down, I did think to myself that it would feel really, really good, just so good, if we get a power team. When we got it, I was so happy. Yes, this is exactly the way I wanted the plot to go, and I'm happy about it because it just makes sense. You have one guy that was trying to infiltrate from the outside. He's a cop, ended up being the brother who was the front man, so it's more personal to him now and has him relating to the story that much more. But then we have Gi-hun, who obviously won the games in the first season, but from this he wants to take them down because it's blood money. So having these 2 pair up was perfect to me. And I also appreciated how we got a little more information on Suitcase Man. I'm just gonna call him Suitcase Man. Kind of why he started doing this for the Squid Game people and his involvement with it. And I did love the confrontation between him and Gi-hun, and how Gi-hun kept calling him a dog because he is their dog. And so I really loved their little game of Russian roulette there. It was very intense. I also found the game of rock, paper, scissors -1 very intense. Oh, that was a really good one. Oh my god. The way that was filmed, the way it was edited. I love the editing choice too of having the split screen sometimes. I don't know. I just don't see it in movies or TV that often. That the way that it's used here is just so, all of that to say, I felt like even though we weren't getting the games yet and we weren't in it yet, the first 2 episodes felt very necessary to developing the bigger picture of the plot, which is the takedown of the corporation, which is trying to make sure that this never happens again. Was one plot line that I will get into later that I wasn't too much of a fan of, and I'm still not too sure if it was necessary or not. that was more so focused on in episode 2, but we'll get into it. But in terms of Gihan and where he's at, in terms of the sexy cop and where he's at, that's continuation, and the way that they were able to meet each other, the way that they were able to share their experiences and come to a mutual agreement to take them down, I felt was the right move, if that is the way that the story is gonna end. Where I started feeling some problems. Let's talk first about the characters, because that to me was actually my biggest issue for this season, was the characters, in the sense of there's too damn many of them. There are so many characters. Who the are all these people? Who the are y'all? I don't know. Could you tell me every single one of these people's names? Could you honestly, after watching this whole season, tell me every single person's name? Because I couldn't. In season 1, I appreciated it because it was very focused. Very, very focused on our certain set of characters, with a few side characters that we do get to know, and some of them we do get to like. But very, very specific in who we focus on in season 1. We have Gihan, we have Sangwoo, sexy cop, we have Saibyuk, old man, gangster dude, Ali, and then obviously there are other people that we meet within the games that we didn't get that backstory to, but all of those people, excluding the old man because of who he is, we get backstory to. We have their full picture of their situation, why they're going into the game, who they are as people, what their relationships look like. We get that whole picture before they fully enter the games. Whereas here, we don't get that. Here, we just have our main guy, and we get one scene of the pregnant couple. That's all we get. And then focus on a woman who ends up being one of the squids, and I am going to call them a squid because I just really want to call them squids. We get a lot of backstory with this one woman who's a squid, and a lot of focus on her throughout that episode. Then entered the game, and we are introduced to a plethora of characters. Are you ready? Are you ready for this? We have our main guy, the front man this time around, which we'll get into. We have this ex-Marine guy who by the end, I think it's fair to say that he's probably not ex-Marine. I think that's what they were trying to allude to, is that he was full of shit. But anyways, Gyeon's other best friend, who we were introduced to in season 1, that they were both gambling together on the horse races, he's in it now. The trans woman, mother and son duo, pregnant girl with the guy who got her pregnant. We have the thug gangster dude, this guy who gets bullied and harassed by the thug bully dude. We also have this girl who ends up bonding with the trans woman, but I didn't really think of her as a main person anyways, because they didn't really show her too much anyways. Oh yeah, we have this father who actually we got even more backstory than all of these people. That we see that he has a sick daughter with cancer in the hospital, and so he's in here for that reason, and he's there but then not really focused. And then we also have that squid girl who we were introduced to, and we get a lot of her backstory. She's also there. I'm already gonna put it out there, but my prediction is that the squid girl is gonna end up looking after his daughter now that he's dead. Oh, and a crazy lady. We have basically a total of 15 people that we focus on in this season in comparison to the 6 or 7 that we focused on in last season. Are you serious? Are you actually serious? I couldn't keep up. None of these people we get to seeing their lives outside of here. We get stories. We get their stories here and there. I think the most we really get is from the trans woman. She gets to talking about her experiences, why she's in here, which is really tragic. But we don't see any of it like we did in the first season. It was just so unfortunate to me because it then prevents me from caring as much for these characters. I will give the actors, every single actor, their credit. With what they were given, I think they did make it work as much as they could, because I still felt for these people. Oh, I wouldn't want to see this person die. Oh, I hope this person makes it. I do. I still felt myself rooting for people, but it wouldn't be as much of an emotional weight to me, and I think to anybody, when you don't give them enough focus because you have too damn many people. It was interesting to me as well because there was only 7 episodes this season, whereas the last season had 9. I get it in the sense of pacing. Maybe pacing wise it would have felt off, maybe, but I truly do believe it would have helped a lot. Maybe not in the first 3 episodes because I get it, people really want to get to the games, so maybe that would have been just prolonging the games too much. But maybe an episode in between the finale, of maybe right before the finale, we finally get to seeing some people's backstories and where they came from. But who knows, because seasons 2 and 3 were apparently filmed back to back. So maybe we will get that in season 3, potentially. That would be nice. But yeah, that definitely was one of the weaker points this time around, is having less focus on certain characters and having so many characters to the point where you cannot have that focus on certain people. That was unfortunate. The other thing that was my personal gripe is that some of these characters are basically the same archetype as people from the first season. And I could not help but notice that. I'm like, okay, so that's that person. That's that person. You have that token person. We have his best friend, which technically in the first season, it was Sang-woo. It was his childhood best friend. Personality-wise, he obviously is different from the best friend in this season, but nonetheless, the archetype is there of the token best friend. We have the infiltrator that is the same number as the infiltrator from season 1, 001, which is the front man this time around. Last time it was the old man, this time it's the front man. The good-hearted, kind spirit, that was Ali. Also in combination with Oh Il-nam in season 1, that not only was he an infiltrator, but he was the old person. We also have a token old person as well with the old mother. Who's the mother of her son that's also participating in the games. And we have the token bully guy, which was literally basically the same as last season's. Oh my god. And we also have the crazy lady, that we have her and that archetype this time around. It just, I don't know. I get it because there's only so many archetypes you can have, and it would make sense for that type of archetype to repeat. Like, there would be probably a bully type person in this scenario each time. I get that, but it's still was very blatantly obvious on some of these people mirroring the same people of season 1. And a bit on the trans woman, just for information for you all, just in case you're unaware. The trans woman is played by a cisgendered man, and this did spark some controversy online because there were people who were arguing this should be played by an actual trans woman and should not be played by a cis male. But there was also counter arguments to it, saying that for this being a Korean show, that already in itself is very progressive in itself. So there was the counter argument saying that at least they have that representation in the show. All that to say, I'll let you guys make your judgment on how you feel about it. For me personally, I just loved the character. I was very happy with the way that this character was at least developed more than some of the other characters. I would have loved to have seen more personally, because she is a very interesting dynamic character and one of the highlights for me. In terms of characters, I did find myself rooting for, but then not being as heartbroken if they died. The guy who claims to be a soldier, ex-military, which I don't know if he actually was. I think he's a little full of shit, but whatever. I did come to liking him, but then not caring so much if he died. His best friend, again, I think that would have been great if we would have gotten more backstory to him, because he ends up actually dying. But then it didn't feel as emotional as I would have liked it to have been because I don't know you, bro. I don't know you like that. I am still rooting for the pregnant girl and her guy, even though the guy isn't the best, but I still like him over the asshole, obviously. Mother and son, the son himself, I'm like, you could go, personally. If you're the one with the debt and your mama's here, your old fragile mama's here trying to help you in your debt, nah. No, sir. She has given you probably a lot already in your life. Again, I don't know because we didn't see any freaking backstory, but no. Nope, he could die. He could very easily die for me. I think the overall theme here when it comes to the characters is wanting to be shown and not told. Because we are told many things throughout the show. We are told their situations, but we're never shown. And I would have loved to have been shown their situations. Also, before I go into the next segment, I'm just going to call it right now. I have a theory that number 100, this man right here, is a pawn planted by the people running the game. Because his number 100, I feel like was intentional because we have the infiltrator being 001 from the first season and this season is 001. Whereas backwards, 001 is 100. So I feel like him intentionally having that number is a clue. And B, because he just kept talking throughout the entire thing. He kept starting shit the entire game. I don't know. I just feel very suspicious of him. His number 100, the way he kept talking, I just feel like he is also a pawn planted by the uppers, but we'll see. While we're on the topic of characters, I also want to relate this to another issue, which was the lack of death. Especially when you have so many damn characters. Are you kidding? I was like, how are we already at the finale and yet barely any of these motherfuckers have died? Yes, actual people have died, but barely any of the 15 people that I listed have died. None of them have died. What the hell? Maybe has to do with the fact that we only got 3 games this time around, but don't call me bloodthirsty, don't call me insane, don't call me psycho when it's literally Squid Game. When you set up that expectation already in season 1 of nobody being safe, literally all of the characters that we grew to love and care for die, except for our main guy. Every single person died. The stakes were so there. To then have a plethora of characters being introduced this season that we're focusing on, to having none of them die. What the hell? By the last episode, we did get the deaths of the man with the sick kid, Gyeon's best friend, and the asshole dude. That's it. That's literally it out of the 15 people that we were focusing on this season. That's all we got. I guess technically, yeah, the girl that was friends with the trans woman, but I didn't even know her name. But to be fair, I don't really know half these people's names. I definitely would have expected some more. I'm not gonna lie. And I don't know if they're just waiting for the final season to just off half these people. It's not like I want everyone to die either. It's not like that. But especially when you gave them less character arcs and less story to work with, that makes me care for them less. I don't understand why you couldn't have killed off more of these people. I know Gyeon needed an army by the end, and I get that it got to that point, and a lot of these people did end up helping him in the end. But I personally, and this is going to sound cruel, don't cancel me for this. Don't even, but hear me out. I personally would have preferred seeing the old lady die. Hear me out. Because of the emotional weight and impact it would have had to the story. Because yeah, season 1, that was part of the amazing writing and emotional depth that it had, was because we got so attached to these characters that it was so tragic to have them die. But yet we felt something and it made the story that much more emotional for us. Here, I don't know why they didn't have the guts to do it, or if they're just saving it for season 3, because the old lady set it up so perfectly for her to die. Because when they have the second vote to either stay or leave, she tells the son how desperate she is to leave. Can they please leave? And he makes that choice to continue to play. He makes that choice to participate in that. And he says to her it's because he has even more debt that he needs to pay off. And then she gives him that speech on how she could not live without him. If he dies in here, she could not live. But then he's not thinking about her either, that she very well could also die. And she knows that he could live fine without her. With that speech, I thought that was the setup to her then dying in the next game. Because how emotional would that have been? How much of an impact? He made that choice to keep her there when she begged him not to. But for his own selfish personal reasons, that he has his own debt to pay off, he kept her there. To have him then reap his own consequences to those actions, to having his own mother die for his own actions, would have been so powerful. That would have hit so much. That would have been exactly what he deserved, because no, he does not deserve the love of his mom. I'm sorry, that might sound harsh. But seriously, like, she's literally willing to risk her life, her old age, that you're now a grown man, that you should have your shit together. Like, she's willing to risk her life to save you being in these games in the first place. Willing to do all of that for you. And you to be that selfish, to not at least abide by her wishes, to try and get her out of there for her own sake, for her own safety. I would have loved to have him reap his own consequences, but they didn't follow through with that. And that really disappointed me, to be honest, because that would have been an emotional moment. And they had it. They had it. I thought she was going to die in that scene. There really weren't any huge emotional moments this season for me. I don't know if that's universally agreed on, but for me, there just wasn't that. They tried to do it, I think, with the friend of the trans woman, but again, we didn't really know her too well, that I did not really feel it as much in that moment, personally. Disappointed me in terms of emotional weight. I would have loved some emotional weight, but no. I also was hoping that there would be something with the pregnant girl and her guy, that he would have had to have sacrificed himself somehow for her, therefore showing how much he actually did love her and did come into terms with wanting to save her and his baby. And then in terms of the games, I will admit that I would have preferred more, if I'm being honest. And I'm not just here for the games, truly. Like, I am here for the plot, but I would have honestly liked more games. I could have sworn I read somewhere they were going to play tag, and I was really interested into seeing how that would have panned out, but maybe they did for season 3, but I don't know. I don't even know if in season 3 they're gonna have any games. For the first game, as I was kind of mentioning earlier, how there were some parts to this season that felt the same as last season. Unfortunately, when it came to the red light, green light game, and don't hate me. Do not hate me for this. I wasn't as excited as maybe some other people were for this, just because I know this game already. We have seen them play it. We know how it goes. And it just doesn't hit like the first time, because we already know what to expect. And it did go essentially the exact same way that it did in the first season. Even though it was cool seeing Gian trying to protect people, trying to prevent as much death as possible, it was still inevitable, and it still ended up resulting in chaos, trying to flee just like the first season. And then we get the Fly Me to the Moon song, except it's a remix this time, but it's still Fly Me to the Moon just like the first season. And then even towards the end, when they're closing in on the final few seconds, it was very similar to when Gian was about to fall, and then Ali caught him and saved him for the last few seconds there, right down to the last second. The same type of thing happened here, where Gihan chooses to go back for this man who has been shot in the leg, and then the trans woman helps him as well, and then they end up crossing right to the very last second. It just to me was too much of a beat by beat of the first season that I honestly would have wished for there to have been a different game. And I am curious of what they're going to do with this in the next season, because they did show in the post-credits scene that there is a boy that our girl got a boyfriend, but for this time around, unfortunately, it just didn't do it for me. I'm sorry. The second game was really intense. I like the way that was filmed, but oh my god, just the level of the stakes that were there for the first games. It didn't feel as high stakes as the first set of games that they played in the first season either, if I'm being honest. I was a little disappointed in the actual games themselves and would have loved something even more intense and more strategic than what was presented, but that's just my personal opinion for those. Especially the carousel one. I thought the carousel one was gonna lead to more of people not trusting each other and people switching on each other, and I thought it would be more psychological, but then it wasn't really. Because again, when the son was taken from the mom and she didn't end up surviving, I thought that would have caused such a rift between them, but then it didn't. I thought it was going that way and it didn't, and I was a little disappointed in that. Yeah, getting into some plot lines that I'm confused if they were necessary or not. Because again, it's hard to say without season 3 coming to full term, and I would love to do a follow-up video for season 3 into saying yes, this was so worth it, versus no, I don't know why this was there. Number 1 being, going back to her, the Squid Girl. Because yes, as opposed to all of these 15 people that we're focusing on that are in the games, they chose to focus on her in particular and her story in episode 2, which I just don't understand. And I'm really hoping that she becomes even more important in season 3, because right now I'm just not seeing the vision with her. But I'm really hoping that something does happen with her character that makes her that much more important and pivotal to season 3. But we focus just so much on her and that she cares about the little girl with cancer, which is, again, I'm guessing they're going in that direction where she'll probably end up being her caretaker. But my question is why? Because I don't really feel bad for her, because yes, they explain how she is there because she just wants to put people out of their misery. And I get her doing the nice service of, at the very least, killing these people instead of having them suffer to then be harvested for their organs. They've been doing that in a very inhumane way, whereas she is trying to humanely eliminate them and have them not suffer. But I still don't feel bad for her. Tell me your thoughts on her, because for me personally, that still didn't make me like her a lot, because you're still participating in this and you're still killing people. I just didn't really feel as emotionally invested in her and with what's gonna happen with her. Like, if she would have died, I also would not have cared, because they didn't give me enough of her to really sympathize personally. But I get it. If you did end up sympathizing with her, that's great. But for me, I just kept wondering, why is this here? Why are we focusing on her so much? Why is she one of those characters that we got a backstory for and not anybody else? I don't know if she is going to come into a bigger play in the 3rd season. I really hope so. I really hope focusing on her so much was worth it. But to me, at the moment, it just doesn't feel justified. It doesn't. I'm like, bitch, you're killing people still. like you're still killing people. And if she gets a happy ending, I don't know. I don't know how I'll feel about it, because I just don't think she's that great of a person in comparison to some of these other people. I just didn't think that it was necessary to focus on her so much. But we'll see if I eat my words in the 3rd season. That would be great. I would love to eat my own words to that. Having the front man in the games. Now, this was interesting because while I do understand to a point why they would do this, because it was pretty fun seeing what he was gonna do and seeing, okay, is he gonna manipulate people in his own way, which I believe he was doing? What are his conversations with Gihan gonna look like? I did appreciate getting to know him more on that level. However, having him in the games with us very well knowing who he is, having this not be a twist, like how the old man was a twist, I think it takes away as we already know who you are and we already know where you stand. We know he's not changing his mind. So what is the purpose of having him there other than to mess with us? But then it didn't really mess with us because every time they did a game, which was just 2 with him, we knew his team or whoever he was with would have to live, and that he would have to live because he's literally the front man. We knew he wasn't gonna die. We knew he was never in real stakes of death. Unlike the old man, we actually thought that he was gonna die and that he actually did die because we didn't know who he was. Here we know who he is, so we know that there's no stakes with this man. And so especially having the second game being a team game, I genuinely didn't really feel as much was at stake when he was paired with Gihan, when he was paired with the other people that were in their team, because he was never gonna die. I just felt like there wasn't as much purpose to that and the sense of urgency that I felt when it came to the first season. And when there was that last vote to either end the games or continue, and he proved that he was in alliance with them and just kept his whole thing going until literally the very end. He literally had this whole chaos, this whole ruckus of the shootout and everything happen until the very last second. It just makes me question why was the purpose of all of that? Because with the old man, we understood he just wanted to play the games one last time before he died. What was the purpose of frontman being there? Like, was it literally just to manipulate the people into seeing if they will continue the games, into trying to make sure that they do continue the games? I get it, but then we know who he is. There's no surprise there. We know his intentions. We know he's bad. But I thought there would be some development with him, maybe, that he gets to know Gihan more, so then maybe he changes his heart, and that's the whole purpose of him being there, is maybe he learns something from Gihan. But from what we've been presented until the very end, he just... what was he there for? What was he there for other than to just try and keep the games going? So that I was very iffy on with why they did that. But let me know your thoughts on that. For me, it just didn't feel as necessary. Again, maybe season 3 will prove me wrong. I hope so. But so far, I just didn't feel it as necessary to have him in there, especially when we know who he is. In terms of the ending, I think overall, we'll see for next season. I think that's all I can really say for that because, again, like, this isn't finished, so I can't conclusively say anything much about the ending because it's not truly the ending. But I will say for a finale, I get it too why this felt necessary to do, but I just didn't really like it that much, if I'm being honest, but I can't really explain it. I get why it would lead to an all-out war and them trying to shoot their way and taking down the guys by shooting their ways and everything, but I don't know if it was really necessary. I didn't feel as much tension in this as I do with the games, you know? Like, make all the squids play the games. That would be cool. Make it a poor people versus the squids. How about that? That would be so cool. Would it not? Am I stupid? Have the squids, like, have a taste of their own medicine. That would be so cool. It was just a normal takedown. We've seen that so many times in these dystopian worlds where the rebellion happens, and I get it, the rebellion needs to happen, but I've always felt like that was the downside to these dystopian stories, is that they always need that grand shootout rebellion moment where it's all out war. It happens every time, and I would just like something a little different. How do you take down these people without having an all-out war? You know what I mean? Have it be more psychological. Which leads into my last point. This is my very last point into a positive thing that I like this season, but then I don't know if they're going to do anything with that in the last season, if it would make any sense, but I thought it made sense with the way they were setting this up, was the choice. I do love the emphasis on the choice between leaving and staying, and it makes so much sense because yes, they set it up in the second episode when Gian was talking to the front man about taking down the games, and they have that great conversation where he says that the games continue so long as the world continues the way it is, so long as the people are the way they are. You can't stop the games unless the people themselves stop it, which honestly, I feel like that is a good message that, yeah, there are always going to be people who are greedy, always going to be people who want money and are hungry for money. So unless you change that mentality, you can't really stop this. And I did like that theme and how it was holding true for this season, because last season we didn't emphasize on this and this season we do, is with the choice between leaving and staying. We only had, I believe, the one episode where they were choosing that in season 1, whereas here it was every single time after each game they could choose whether they leave or stay. And there was so much emphasis on this that I was like, yes, this has to end with all of you guys realizing that these are not worth it. The games are not worth it. You yourselves are responsible for your financial decisions, for your money decisions, and you yourselves can choose to live your life the way you've been living it, or make a difference for yourself and pay off your debt. Choose to make money in an ethical way. It starts with the people realizing that their lives are more valuable than the money is the thing, is that they are choosing money over their own life, and they're willing to risk their life over this money. And so I liked how there was that aspect in choosing and having people switching sides and realizing the errors to their ways versus getting greedier. And I thought it would have been perfect for this to end with the people, and very powerful for it to end with the people, with one last vote where everybody realizes how horrendous this whole thing and how unethical this whole thing is and how wrong this is. I thought that would have been so powerful for everybody to realize that, for the remainder of people to realize that, and for them to all choose to stop the game. Maybe it's not realistic, but I thought that would have been powerful and the whole point of the message, because you keep emphasizing on people's choices and their choice to continue this. And with Gihan's conversation with the frontman saying that it only continues if they continue it, that I thought is where this was leading to, is that the people have to make that choice and realization, and something has to happen for them to make that realization. And I thought something would, because also the best friend, was telling Gihan how he stood by him not because of a grand speech or anything, but because he saw Gihan crying and in distress, and that alone made him go on his side and realize that he needs to stick by Gihan in the work situation that they had. So I thought something would have had to have happened for them to all then come together and realize that this is wrong and that they're going to put an end to it, but no. But no. And I do realize also that that wouldn't have stopped the entire games entirely, because they could just very well get a next group of people. And I get how they have to take down the whole corporation themselves, but I thought that's where this was leading to, and then it didn't. But I'm curious if they'll continue that theme for the next season, or if it's just going to be an all-out war and they just have it be an all-out war. I don't know. I think personally it would be cool if they had the squids be in the games, get a taste of their medicine, and have them all realize that these games need to be shut down and come to that realization. And then the front man, I thought him having experienced it, maybe he would come to that realization himself as well, but he didn't, and he's still enforcing it. So he needs to also have that realization as well, I think. And I feel like that would be better than just simply shoot, kill everybody. We'll see. we'll see what they do. I'm very curious. We also have the cop that's still searching for them, and that plot twist that the boatman was working for them all along. Whew, I know that was a long one, but those are all my thoughts. Please let me know your thoughts, which characters you loved. If everything that I was saying you don't agree with, it's totally fine. Tell me what you would love to see for season 3, if you have any expectations on how you would want it to end. Tell me if you think there were certain plot points that you didn't like, if there were certain characters you didn't really like. Tell me if there's anything I missed that you would have liked me to have talked about. But there was a lot, obviously. There was a lot, but I tried my best. Thank you guys for watching. Until next time. Mwah.